Yes, thank you, Chair. This is probably for Professor Popova, perhaps Dr. Arel as well. And it picks up on this question of off-ramps, because the only off-ramp you've offered us, and there were some new ones in the last exchange, is essentially regime change. Regime change by decapitating the person at the very top. Now people have been talking about Munich and, the last major European war. In that situation, the regime change, the decapitation at the top, happened when the Allied troops were not far from the bunker in Berlin. So that's why I want to keep coming back to whether there are off-ramps. I hope for the best, but short of marching to the outskirts of Berlin, so to speak, is there a way of avoiding that? Can you tell me if there's anything that might be acceptable to the West, as you broadly described earlier on, anything that might be acceptable in the Minsk Agreement or the Steinmeier Agreement in 2019 that we could perhaps desperately try to revive as a possible off-ramp?
Unfortunately, I don't think there's anything in the Minsk Agreement that can be revived. And the reason for that is that the Minsk Agreement, at its core, was a Russian attempt to insert a Trojan horse within the Ukrainian state, and to use it in order to control the Ukrainian state. At this point, I think Minsk is not at all acceptable to Russia either, because they know at this point, probably, that the only way they can control Ukraine is through full-scale military occupation. This, doing it through this Trojan horse of Donbass is no longer at all realistic. So I think Minsk is dead, both for the West, but also for Russia.
Can I ask the others to chip in? And this is a question about realpolitik. It's not a question about what we wish and hope for legitimate aspirations of Ukrainians. Might the French, might the Germans, might the Americans, might the Canadians say, look, maybe there is something in Minsk that we can modify or revert to. May I ask Professor Arel or Mr. Wastrup to comment as well, if there's time?
Sure.
1 minute.
Listen, yeah, there cannot be any kind of post-Minsk, obviously, without the Ukrainians. And I think something absolutely epochal in Russian-Ukrainian history had just happened. Putin is bombing Eastern Ukraine, Russian-speaking Eastern Ukraine. And there is a bond here. We're not talking by a bond. Of course, there's a cultural bond between Russians and Ukrainians. Of course, there's a linguistic bond. And for a lot of Ukrainians, a sense of shared history, although that was debated in Ukraine, World War II and so forth. Something has broken. I was citing the former deputy who was, very, very pro-Russian, that his entire life, understanding of life just vanished. And how can you then come at a table and negotiate some kind of compromise about the status of Donbass within Ukraine? This is all gone. So we don't know next month or in 6 months, but right now it's an entirely new situation on the ground.